40,000 miles used to mean a car was just getting broken in. For these 7 SUVs, it's when the real problems start showing up in mechanic bays across the country. We're talking transmissions that grenade themselves, engines that misfire before you've even made your first loan payment, and all-wheel drive systems that demand expensive service just to keep running. This isn't internet speculation. This is pulled straight from owner complaint databases, independent reliability data, and the patterns mechanics see over and over on their lifts. Today, we're counting down 7 SUVs with documented early failure patterns and exactly what's going wrong. Ford Escape Hybrid. Starting off our list at number 7 is a name that might genuinely surprise you, the Ford Escape Hybrid. Just a year after Consumer Reports named it among the best hybrid SUVs under $45,000, the organization's own reader survey data flipped that assessment entirely, flagging the Escape Hybrid for a cluster of brake and battery-related issues that pushed it onto a very different kind of list altogether. Owners have reported the vehicle's infotainment system becoming unresponsive or going completely blank, sometimes without warning, which is more than just an annoyance when that same screen controls climate settings, drive mode selection, and the backup camera display all at once. Losing that screen mid-drive isn't just irritating, it strips away functions a lot of owners have come to rely on every single day, and in some reported cases, the screen simply won't come back without a full dealer visit, a software reset, or in more stubborn cases, a module replacement entirely. On top of the infotainment complaints, brake-related issues have shown up early in ownership for a meaningful number of owners, which is a genuine concern in a vehicle that relies heavily on regenerative braking as part of its overall hybrid drivetrain design. When that regenerative braking system doesn't behave predictably, inconsistent pedal feel, unexpected grabbing, or delayed response between the regenerative and friction braking systems handing off to one another, it undermines confidence in one of the single most safety-critical systems on the entire vehicle, and it's exactly the kind of issue that erodes owner trust fast. There's also a psychological dimension worth mentioning here that mechanics notice constantly. Once an owner experiences one unexplained brake or electronic quirk, they tend to become hyper-aware of every subsequent noise, hesitation, or warning light, even ones unrelated to the original issue. That heightened scrutiny often means Escape Hybrid owners bring their vehicles in for service more frequently than owners of a vehicle with a cleaner reputation would for the exact same minor symptom, which in turn generates more documented complaints and reinforces the reputation further. What makes this one genuinely sting is the reversal in reputation. The Escape Hybrid launched with a strong reputation among reviewers and consumer advocates specifically for its efficiency and its dependability credentials, and it's since landed on Consumer Reports' separate least reliable vehicles list entirely, a genuine fall from grace in a very short window of time. For a hybrid marketed specifically on the promise of efficiency and long-term dependability, brake and battery complaints surfacing this early in ownership are exactly the kind of pattern that should make shoppers pause before signing, especially if lower running costs and reduced maintenance were a major part of the original buying decision in the first place. Hashtag 6. Mercedes-Benz GLE. At number 6, we've got the Mercedes-Benz GLE, a genuinely impressive vehicle on paper by almost any measure. Turbocharged, mild hybrid 4-cylinder and inline-6 engine options across the lineup, and a range-topping V8 variant producing 510 horsepower and 538 lb-ft of torque for buyers who want serious performance wrapped in a 3-row luxury package. But under the hood of that impressive spec sheet is a documented reliability problem that's genuinely hard to ignore. Since debuting for the 2024 model year, the GLE has already accumulated no fewer than 11 separate recall actions in a remarkably short span on the market. Owners have also reported persistent infotainment issues, with the system freezing or crashing entirely being the most frequently cited complaint across owner forums and complaint databases. For a vehicle in this price bracket, where the entire cabin experience is deliberately built around a large, feature-dense digital interface controlling everything from climate to drive settings to navigation to even basic functions like adjusting mirrors, A system that crashes on a regular basis isn't a minor inconvenience tucked away in the options list. It directly affects how the vehicle feels to actually drive and live with day to day. And it's the kind of complaint that shows up again and again in owner reviews once the initial new car excitement wears off and the daily commute reality sets in. 11 recalls in roughly 2 years is also worth putting in real context. Recalls cover everything from minor labeling issues to serious safety concerns, so not every single one of these 11 necessarily represents a life-threatening defect. But the sheer volume on a vehicle that's barely had time to establish itself in the marketplace suggests either a rushed development and testing cycle, supply chain quality control issues, or both working against the vehicle at the exact same time. For a brand that built its entire reputation on engineering precision, that volume of recalls this early is a genuinely notable shift worth flagging to potential buyers. To be fair, not every single GLE owner has a bad experience, and plenty genuinely report solid reliability alongside the vehicle's upscale cabin, quiet ride, and multitude of powertrain options to choose from depending on their specific needs and budget. But 11 recalls in roughly 2 years on the market is a real documented number, not a vague online impression or a single disgruntled owner's rant, and it's exactly the kind of pattern that puts a modern, six-figure adjacent luxury SUV on a list like this one, right alongside vehicles costing a fraction of the price and carrying none of the prestige. Hashtag 5. Chevrolet Equinox. At number 5, we've got the Chevrolet Equinox, one of the best-selling compact SUVs in America, which makes its documented problems all the more relevant, since so many people across the country are actually driving one every single day, commuting to work, dropping kids at school, and relying on it as their primary vehicle. Owner complaints specifically describe engine misfires occurring at under 1,000 miles, meaning some owners experienced genuine drivetrain problems before they'd even finished their first full tank of gas in a brand new vehicle they'd just signed a multi-year loan for. Beyond the early misfires, owners have also reported recurring electrical glitches affecting various vehicle systems, along with repeated dealership visits that didn't fully resolve the underlying issue on the very first attempt. That specific pattern, a problem that requires multiple trips back to the dealer just to get properly diagnosed and actually fixed, sometimes with technicians unable to replicate the issue on the first or even second visit, is one of the more frustrating experiences an owner can go through, especially on a vehicle marketed as a reliable, no-nonsense, affordable daily driver for commuters, students, and young families who specifically chose it to avoid exactly this kind of hassle in the first place. There's also a financial angle worth mentioning here that compounds the mechanical concerns significantly. Industry depreciation data shows that spending just $3,600 more upfront on a comparable Honda CR-V results in significantly less value lost over the same ownership period compared to the Equinox. On paper, at the initial sticker price, the Equinox looks like the clearly more affordable choice between the two. Once you factor in both the documented early reliability complaints and the steeper depreciation curve tracked over several years of ownership, that affordability gap narrows considerably, and in some ownership scenarios may disappear entirely once repair costs, extended warranty considerations, and resale value are all factored into the total cost of ownership. It's also worth noting that these misfire and electrical complaints aren't isolated to one specific trim level or engine option. They've been reported across a range of configurations and trim packages, which suggests the underlying issue isn't limited to a single narrow production batch or a single supplier problem, but instead reflects a broader pattern in how a meaningful percentage of these vehicles have performed for real owners since leaving the factory floor. For a nameplate this popular, even a relatively modest percentage of affected vehicles still translates into a very large absolute number of frustrated owners nationwide. Hashtag 4. Jeep Compass.
The Jeep Compass keeps failing owners, and Stellantis keeps ignoring the evidence. Stop completely, because the Jeep Compass represents the most instructive abandonment story on this list. Every other vehicle here is being abandoned for new technology failures or EV-specific challenges. The Compass is being abandoned for conventional, documented, preventable reliability failures that Stellantis has been provided extensive evidence about across multiple model years and has demonstrably failed to resolve with the urgency those failures demand. Starting at $27,000, the Compass competes against the Honda CR-V, Toyota RAV4, and Mazda CX-5, vehicles whose reliability records it cannot approach by any independent measurement. The Jeep badge commands brand loyalty, keeping Compass transaction prices higher than vehicles from competitors with demonstrably superior reliability. Buyers are paying a heritage premium for a below-average ownership experience. And when that realization arrives around the third dealer visit, the decision to absorb a trade-in loss and exit becomes emotionally necessary rather than merely logical. What most people don't realize is that Stellantis possesses the warranty claim frequency data, the J.D. Power survey results, and the NHTSA complaint filing volume to understand precisely where the Compass is failing its buyers. The persistence of specific documented failure modes across multiple model years without comprehensive resolution represents a product management prioritization that current owners are paying the price for through first-year abandonment decisions that data shows are accelerating. Number 5 involves a vehicle whose revolutionary ambition and operational reality diverged in ways that passionate early adopters are still processing emotionally and financially.
Hashtag 3. Ford Bronco Sport. At number 3, we've got the Ford Bronco Sport, the smaller, more affordable sibling to the full-size Bronco, and a vehicle that's already built a rough reliability reputation, despite being a relatively recent addition to Ford's broader SUV lineup. Independent reliability scoring has placed the Bronco Sport at just 2 out of 5, a notably poor mark for a vehicle that's still relatively early in its overall production run and hasn't had decades on the market to work out early design and manufacturing kinks the way some older, more established nameplates have had the chance to do. Owners have specifically reported problematic brakes, serious engine issues, and body hardware failures, all surfacing within just the first few years of ownership, rather than emerging gradually over a much longer timeline, the way age-related wear typically would. That combination is particularly concerning because it spans 3 completely different vehicle systems: braking, the engine itself, and physical body components like trim, seals, door hardware, and weather stripping, rather than one isolated weak point that owners might be able to anticipate, budget around, or simply learn to live with as a known, tolerable quirk of an otherwise solid vehicle. Priced around $30,000, the Bronco Sport is positioned as an affordable way into rugged, off-road capable SUV ownership, appealing directly to buyers who want genuine trail capability, all-terrain tires, and available off-road drive modes without the full-size Bronco's considerably higher price tag. But that affordability doesn't mean a whole lot in practice if you're making more trips to the mechanic's bay than to the actual trailhead the vehicle is marketed and advertised for in the first place. A vehicle bought specifically for weekend adventure that instead spends its weekends in a service bay defeats the entire purpose buyers had in mind when they chose it over a more conventional crossover. Combined with reliability concerns also independently reported on Ford's larger Explorer model, there's a real, documented pattern emerging across multiple current Ford SUV nameplates that's genuinely worth paying attention to if you're cross-shopping anywhere in this broader segment right now. It suggests the issue may run deeper than any single model's specific engineering choices, pointing instead toward broader quality control processes or design philosophy questions worth researching carefully before signing on any Ford SUV built on a similar recent platform or sharing similar underlying componentry. Hashtag 2. Land Rover Range Rover Evoque. At number 2, we've got the Range Rover Evoque, a vehicle that consistently gets praised by reviewers and buyers alike for its distinctive coupe-like styling, and just as consistently criticized for what's actually happening underneath that styling once you start putting real miles on it. The Evoque's Haldex all-wheel drive system specifically requires scheduled service roughly every 40,000 miles, and neglecting that maintenance interval, whether the owner realizes it's coming due or simply isn't told about it clearly at the time of purchase, can lead to the entire system failing outright and requiring a far more expensive repair than the routine service itself would ever have cost in the first place. Beyond the AWD system specifically, owners report electrical gremlins showing up across multiple different parts of the vehicle over time. Window switches, interior lighting, sensor warnings that come and go without explanation, along with an automatic gearbox that's prone to harsh shifts and noticeable jerking during otherwise completely normal, unremarkable daily driving like pulling away from a stoplight or merging onto a highway. On top of that, the AdBlue diesel emission system on the variants equipped with it has developed a documented reputation for triggering false warning lights even when the fluid reservoir is completely full, a genuinely frustrating false alarm pattern that gradually erodes trust in the vehicle's other warning systems too, since owners understandably start wondering which alerts on the dashboard are genuinely worth responding to, and which ones are just background noise to be tolerated and ignored. Starting around $51,000, the Evoque asks buyers to pay a genuine substantial luxury premium over more mainstream compact SUV competitors that often match or exceed it on interior space and technology. The list of documented issues here strongly suggests that premium doesn't necessarily buy the peace of mind you'd reasonably expect to come along with it at that specific price point. The Haldex Systems specific 40,000 mile service requirement makes this particular entry especially relevant to today's video topic. It's a documented, published maintenance cliff that arrives almost exactly at the mileage mark we're focused on throughout this entire countdown. And skipping it isn't some minor scheduling oversight you can casually put off a few extra months without consequence. It's genuinely the difference between a routine, relatively inexpensive maintenance visit and a major, wallet-draining repair bill down the road that could have been entirely avoided with proper upkeep. It's also worth mentioning that a lot of Evoque owners report not being clearly informed about this specific service interval at the time of purchase, meaning the failure often comes as a genuine, unpleasant surprise rather than something they were actively budgeting and planning for from day one of ownership. Dealership finance and sales staff don't always emphasize these kinds of specialized maintenance requirements during the buying process, which leaves a lot of buyers genuinely caught off guard when the bill eventually arrives. Hashtag 1. Jeep Grand Cherokee. And that brings us to number 1, a repeat offender that shows up on unreliable SUV lists almost every single year without fail, the Jeep Grand Cherokee. Consumer Reports has named it the least reliable mid-size SUV for 2025, and that's before you even get into the specific, well-documented mechanical issues owners have reported for years across multiple generations of this long-running nameplate. Certain model years of the Grand Cherokee are built around an 8-speed ZF automatic transmission, and CarComplaints.com doesn't mince words about it, stating plainly and directly that the transmission is fundamentally unreliable in these specific model years. Owners describe rough shifting, jerking, and noticeable lag during gear changes, with problems frequently showing up before these vehicles even reach 40,000 miles, putting this specific documented issue right at the center of what this entire video is actually about. Separately, older model years have also suffered from a failure-prone, totally integrated power module, an electrical component whose failure can leave the entire vehicle completely undrivable with no advance warning. With an average failure point reported around 52,000 miles across a large sample of documented complaints gathered over many years of ownership data. More recently, the plug-in hybrid variants have added their own genuinely serious concerns on top of the existing transmission and electrical issues already well documented across the gas-only models. NHTSA Consumer Alert specifically told owners to park their vehicles outside and away from buildings, and if the mechanical and safety concerns weren't already enough on their own, the financial picture compounds the problem even further. Resale value estimates show the Grand Cherokee losing somewhere between 52% and 60% of its original value within just 5 years, depending on which specific valuation source you check, whether that's CarEdge, Kelley Blue Book, or IC Cars. An electrical module failure, or a battery-related recall somewhere throughout your ownership. You're also watching the vehicle's resale value evaporate considerably faster than most direct competitors in the same segment. Often at the exact same time, repair bills are becoming more and more likely to show up on your particular unit as it ages. It's worth noting this pattern isn't limited to one narrow model year either. It's a documented issue spanning multiple production years and multiple separate vehicle systems, from the transmission to the electronics to the plug-in hybrid powertrain, and that breadth is exactly why the Grand Cherokee takes the undisputed #1 spot on this entire list today. When mechanics see a vehicle show up on their lift with this many different documented failure points across so many different owners in so many different regions, it stops looking like bad luck or a coincidence and starts looking like a genuine, systemic pattern worth knowing about well before you ever sign the paperwork on one of these. So there's the full list. 7 SUVs with genuinely documented patterns of early failure, allied by the Jeep Grand Cherokee's combination of transmission trouble, electrical failures, and a serious hybrid recall. Notice the through line here. It's rarely one catastrophic defect, it's usually a cluster of smaller issues, brakes, electronics, drivetrain hesitation, that compound into real money and real headaches right around that 40,000-mile mark. If you're shopping in this segment, get the maintenance history and recall status before you sign anything. Let me know in the comments if you've owned one of these, and subscribe for more real reliability breakdowns.